Chapter 15. After all these things, this word of God came to Abram in a vision. Don't be afraid, Abram. I'm your shield. Your reward will be grand. Abram said, God, Master, what use are your gifts as long as I'm childless, and Eliezer of Damascus is going to inherit everything? Abram continued, See, you've given me no children, and now a mere house servant is going to get it all. Then God's message came. Don't worry, he won't be your heir. A son from your body will be your heir. Then he took him outside and said, Look at the sky. Count the stars. Can you do it? Count your descendants. You're going to have a big family, Abram. And he believed God. God declared him set right with God. God continued, I'm the same God who brought you from Ur of the Chaldees and gave you this land to own. Abram said, Master God, how am I to know this, that it will all be mine? God said, Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, and a dove and a young pigeon. He brought all these animals to him, split them down the middle, and laid the halves opposite each other. But he didn't split the birds. Vultures swooped down on the carcasses, but Abram scared them off. As the sun went down, a deep sleep overcame Abram, and then a sense of dread, dark and heavy. God said to Abram, Know this, your descendants will live as outsiders in a land not theirs. They'll be enslaved and beaten down for 400 years. Then I'll punish their slave masters. Your offspring will march out of there loaded with plunder. But not you. You'll have a long and full life and die a good and peaceful death. Not until the 4th generation will your descendants return here. Sin is still a thriving business among the Amorites. When the sun was down and it was dark, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch moved between the split carcasses. That's when God made a covenant with Abram. I'm giving this land to your children, from the Nile River in Egypt to the river Euphrates in Assyria, the country of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaim, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Chapter 16. Sarai, Abram's wife, hadn't yet produced a child. She had an Egyptian maid named Hagar. Sarai said to Abram, God has not seen fit to let me have a child. Sleep with my maid. Maybe I can get a family from her. Abram agreed to do what Sarai said. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took her Egyptian maid Hagar and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. Abram had been living 10 years in Canaan when this took place. He slept with Hagar, and she got pregnant. When she learned she was pregnant, she looked down on her mistress. Sarai told Abram, It's all your fault that I'm suffering this abuse. I put my maid in bed with you, and the minute she knows she's pregnant, she treats me like I'm nothing. May God decide which of us is right. You decide, said Abram. Your maid is your business. Sarai was abusive to Hagar, and she ran away. An angel of God found her beside a spring in the desert. It was the spring on the road to Shur. He said, Hagar, maid of Sarai, what are you doing here? She said, I'm running away from Sarai, my mistress. The angel of God said, Go back to your mistress. Put up with her abuse. He continued, I'm going to give you a big family, children past counting. From this pregnancy, you'll get a son. Name him Ishmael, for God heard you. God answered you. He'll be a bucking bronco of a man, a real fighter, fighting and being fought, always stirring up trouble, always at odds with his family. She answered God by name, praying to the God who spoke to her. You're the God who sees me. Yes, he saw me, and then I saw him. That's how that desert spring got named God Alive Sees Me Spring. That spring is still there, between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar gave Abram a son. Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave him his son, Ishmael. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, God showed up and said to him, I am the strong God. Live entirely before me. Live to the hilt. I'll make a covenant between us, and I'll give you a huge family." Overwhelmed, Abram fell flat on his face. Then God said to him, "This is my covenant with you. You'll be the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Abram, but Abraham, meaning that I'm making you the father of many nations. I'll make you a father of fathers. I'll make nations from you. Kings will issue from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you, a covenant that includes your descendants, a covenant that goes on and on and on, a covenant that commits me to be your God and the God of your descendants. And I'm giving you and your descendants this land where you are now just camping, this whole country of Canaan, to own forever. And I'll be their God." God continued to Abraham, "And you will honor my covenant. You and your descendants, generation after generation. This is the covenant that you are to honor, the covenant that pulls in all your descendants. Circumcise every male. Circumcise by cutting off the foreskin of the penis. It will be the sign of the covenant between us. Every male baby will be circumcised when he is 8 days old, generation after generation. This includes houseborn slaves and slaves bought from outsiders who are not blood kin. Make sure you circumcise both your own children and anyone brought in from the outside. That way, my covenant will be cut into your body, a permanent mark of my permanent covenant. An uncircumcised male, one who has not had the foreskin of his penis cut off, will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." God continued speaking to Abraham. "And Sarai, your wife, don't call her Sarai any longer. Call her Sarah. I'll bless her. Yes, I'll give you a son by her. Oh, how I'll bless her. Nations will come from her. Kings of nations will come from her." Abraham fell flat on his face, and then he laughed, thinking, "Can a 100-year-old man father a son? And can Sarah, at 90 years, have a baby?" Recovering, Abraham said to God, "Oh, keep Ishmael alive and well before you." But God said, "That's not what I mean. Your wife, Sarah, will have a baby, a son. Name him Isaac." Laughter. "I'll establish my covenant with him and his descendants, a covenant that lasts forever." "And Ishmael? Yes, I heard your prayer for him. I'll also bless him. I'll make sure he has plenty of children, a huge family. He'll father 12 princes. I'll make him a great nation. But I'll establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will give you about this time next year." God finished speaking with Abraham and left. Then Abraham took his son Ishmael and all his servants, whether houseborn or purchased, every male in his household, and circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins that very day, just as God had told him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised. His son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. Abraham and Ishmael were circumcised the same day, together with all the servants of his household, those born there and those purchased from outsiders. All were circumcised with him. Chapter 18. God appeared to Abraham at the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent. It was the hottest part of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing. He ran from his tent to greet them and bowed before them. He said, "Master, if it please you, stop for a while with your servant. I'll get some water so you can wash your feet. Rest under this tree. I'll get some food to refresh you on your way, since your travels have brought you across my path." They said, "Certainly, go ahead." Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. He said, "Hurry, get 3 cups of our best flour, knead it, and make bread." Then Abraham ran to the cattle pen and picked out a nice plump calf and gave it to the servant, who lost no time getting it ready. Then he got curds and milk, brought them with the calf that had been roasted, set the meal before the men, and stood there under the tree while they ate. The men said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" He said, "In the tent." One of them said, "I'm coming back about this time next year. When I arrive, your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening at the tent opening, just behind the man. Abraham and Sarah were old by this time, very old. Sarah was far past the age for having babies. Sarah laughed within herself. An old woman like me get pregnant with this old man of a husband? God said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Me? Have a baby? An old woman like me?' Is anything too hard for God? I'll be back about this time next year, and Sarah will have a baby." Sarah lied. She said, "I didn't laugh," because she was afraid. But he said, "Yes, you did. You laughed." When the men got up to leave, they set off for Sodom. Abraham walked with them to say goodbye. Then God said, "Shall I keep back from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham is going to become a large and strong nation. All of the nations of the world are going to find themselves blessed through him. Yes, I've settled on him as the one to train his children and future family to observe God's way of life, live kindly and generously and fairly, so that God can complete in Abraham what he promised him." God continued, "The cries of the victims in Sodom and Gomorrah are deafening. The sin of those cities is immense. I'm going down to see for myself, see if what they're doing is as bad as it sounds. Then I'll know." The men set out for Sodom, but Abraham stood in God's path, blocking his way. Abraham confronted him. "Are you serious? Are you planning on getting rid of the good people right along with the bad? What if there are 50 decent people left in the city? Will you lump the good with the bad and get rid of the lot? Wouldn't you spare the city for the sake of those 50 innocents? I can't believe that you'd do that. Kill off the good and the bad alike, as if there were no difference between them. Doesn't the judge of all the earth judge with justice?" God said, "If I find 50 decent people in the city of Sodom, I'll spare the place just for them." Abraham came back. "Do I, a mere mortal made from a handful of dirt, dare open my mouth again to my master? What if the 50 fall short by 5? Would you destroy the city because of those missing 5? He said, "I won't destroy it if there are 45. Abraham spoke up again. "What if you only find 40? "Neither will I destroy it for 40. He said, "Master, don't be irritated with me, but what if only 30 are found?" "No, I won't do it if I find 30. He pushed on. "I know I'm trying your patience, Master, but how about for 20? "I won't destroy it for 20. He wouldn't quit. "Don't get angry, Master. This is the last time. What if you only come up with 10? "For the sake of only 10, I won't destroy the city." When God finished talking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham went home. Chapter 19. The 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening. Lot was sitting at the city gate. He saw them and got up to welcome them, bowing before them and said, "Please, my friends, come to my house and stay the night. Wash up. You can rise early and be on your way refreshed." They said, "No, we'll sleep in the street." But he insisted, wouldn't take no for an answer, and they relented and went home with him. Lot fixed a hot meal for them, and they ate. Before they went to bed, men from all over the city of Sodom, young and old, descended on the house from all sides and boxed them in. They yelled to Lot, "Where are the men who are staying with you for the night? Bring them out so we can have our sport with them." Lot went out, barring the door behind him, and said, "Brothers, please, don't be vile. Look, I have 2 daughters, virgins. Let me bring them out. You can take your pleasure with them, but don't touch these men. They're my guests." They said, "Get lost. You drop in from nowhere, and now you're going to tell us how to run our lives? We'll treat you worse than them." And they charged past Lot to break down the door. But the 2 men reached out and pulled Lot inside the house, locking the door. Then they struck blind the men who were trying to break down the door, both leaders and followers, leaving them groping in the dark. The 2 men said to Lot, "Do you have any other family here? Sons, daughters, anybody in the city? Get them out of here, and now. We're going to destroy this place. The outcries of victims here to God are deafening. We've been sent to blast this place into oblivion." Lot went out and warned the fiancés of his daughters, "Evacuate this place. God is about to destroy this city." But his daughters' would-be husbands treated it as a joke. At break of day, the angels pushed Lot to get going. "Hurry, get your wife and 2 daughters out of here before it's too late and you're caught in the punishment of the city." Lot was dragging his feet. The men grabbed Lot's arm and the arms of his wife and daughters. God was so merciful to them and dragged them to safety outside the city. When they had them outside, Lot was told, "Now run for your life. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere on the plain. Run for the hills or you'll be swept away." But Lot protested. "No, masters, you can't mean it. I know that you've taken a liking to me and have done me an immense favor in saving my life, but I can't run for the mountains. Who knows what terrible thing might happen to me in the mountains and leave me for dead? Look over there. That town is close enough to get to. It's a small town, hardly anything to it. Let me escape there and save my life. It's a mere wide place in the road." He said to him, "All right, if you insist, I'll let you have your way, and I won't stamp out the town you've spotted. But hurry up, run for it. I can't do anything until you get there." That's why the town was called Zoar. That is, small town. The sun was high in the sky when Lot arrived at Zoar. Then God rained brimstone and fire down on Sodom and Gomorrah, a river of lava from God out of the sky, and destroyed these cities and the entire plain and everyone who lived in the cities and everything that grew from the ground. But Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. Abraham got up early the next morning and went to the place he had so recently stood with God. He looked out over Sodom and Gomorrah, surveying the whole plain. All he could see was smoke belching from the earth, like smoke from a furnace. And that's the story. When God destroyed the cities of the plain, he was mindful of Abraham and first got Lot out of there before he blasted those cities off the face of the earth. Lot left Zoar and went into the mountains to live with his 2 daughters. He was afraid to stay in Zoar. He lived in a cave with his daughters. One day, the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is getting old, and there's not a man left in the country by whom we can get pregnant. Let's get our father drunk with wine and lie with him. We'll get children through our father. It's our only chance to keep our family alive." They got their father drunk with wine that very night. The older daughter went and lay with him. He was oblivious, knowing nothing of what she did. The next morning, the older said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Tonight it's your turn. We'll get him drunk again, and then you sleep with him. We'll both get a child through our father and keep our family alive." So that night they got their father drunk again, and the younger went in and slept with him. Again he was oblivious, knowing nothing of what she did. Both daughters became pregnant by their father, Lot. The older daughter had a son and named him Moab, the ancestor of the present-day Moabites. The younger daughter had a son and named him Ben-Ammi, the ancestor of the present-day Ammonites.